October 4th, 1957. Malton, Ontario. The tarmac stretches endless under an autumn sky. Cold and vast as the Arctic, the plane was designed to defend. Over 13,000 people have gathered outside the Avro aircraft hangar. Workers, engineers, politicians, journalists. This is the moment. The dream made real. At precisely 2 p.m., the hangar doors groan open. She emerges like a white ghost. Sleek and impossible. RL-201, the Avro Arrow. Her delta wings stretch 50 feet across. Her fuselage, 78 feet of perfect aerodynamic sculpture, gleams beneath the overcast light. No rivets mar her skin. No compromise weakens her lines. She is Mach 2 ambition wrapped in titanium and aluminum. A machine that shouldn't exist, yet somehow does. The crowd gasps. Cameras flash. This is Canada's declaration. We belong among giants. But 5,000 miles to the east, at that exact hour, a different machine is screaming upward toward orbit. Sputnik, a Soviet metal sphere the size of a beach ball, eeping its way into history, into the collective nightmare of the West. The radio reports crackle through the crowd. The newspapers will lead with Moscow, not Malton. The Arrow's rollout, painstakingly timed for maximum press coverage, is drowned beneath the sound of a new kind of war. Standing beside RL-201, Crawford Gordon, president of Avro Arrow Canada, forces a smile for the cameras. He knows what no one else here can yet see, that the ground has already shifted, that this magnificent white bird, before it ever truly flies, is dying. The world in the mid-1950s teeters on the edge of oblivion, and everyone knows it. Moscow has the bomb, Washington has the bomb, and between them, stretching across the roof of the world, endless, white, undefended, lies the polar wasteland, the shortest route from one to the other. 3,000 miles of Arctic ice, 6 hours of flight time, and no meaningful warning. In the shadowed planning rooms of North American air defense, strategists calculate nightmares. Soviet long-range bombers like the turboprop Tupolev Tu-95 Bear possessed an intercontinental range exceeding 7,000 miles. More than enough to reach Toronto, Detroit, Chicago, New York. The Myashichev M4 Bison, first flown in January 1953, could strike deep into the continental United States. Soviet propaganda films show these giants in formation. Bomb bays loaded with thermonuclear payloads. The message? We can reach you. Canada sits directly beneath the flight path. Every bomber headed south from Siberia crosses Canadian airspace. If war comes, when war comes, many believe, the first warning will be radar blips over Baffin Island, and minutes later, mushroom clouds over Montreal. The Royal Canadian Air Force's existing interceptor, the Avro CF-100 Canuck, is capable but subsonic. Soviet bombers are faster, higher, getting better. The RCAF needs something that doesn't exist yet. In April 1953, they issue Specification Air 7-3, demanding an interceptor with a cruising speed of Mach 1.5 at 70,000 feet. The aircraft must reach those conditions in under 5 minutes from engine start, operate from a 6,000-foot runway in temperatures from 100 above to 100 below 0 Fahrenheit. Range, 300 nautical miles for normal missions, 200 for high-speed intercepts. Weapons carried internally. No external pylons degrading supersonic performance. An RCAF team led by Ray Footit surveys American, British and French manufacturers. They return with a sobering conclusion. Nothing on the drawing boards can meet even half these requirements. The Americans are working on the Century series, sleek fighters like the F-104 Starfighter. But those are point defense interceptors, not the long-range, all-weather Guardian the RCAF envisions. Which means Canada has a choice. Accept something inferior and pray it's enough, or attempt the impossible. At Avro Arrow Canada in Malton, Ontario, a team of engineers, many fresh from wartime projects in Britain, begins sketching something audacious. They call it the CF-105. The mathematicians warn the physics won't work. The metallurgists say the materials don't exist. The engine specialists explain no power plant can deliver the required thrust. The engineers listen politely. Then keep working, because if they fail, the bombers will come, and there will be no second chance. Malton, Ontario, a bedroom community northwest of Toronto. Population barely 15,000. This is where they decided to build the future. The Avro complex sprawls across the winter landscape like a metal city, hangars the size of cathedrals, assembly lines that stretch beyond sight, wind tunnels that scream at frequencies dogs can hear, and inside, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, over 14,000 people bent over drafting tables, milling machines, titanium sheets, trying to solve problems that shouldn't have solutions. Chief Engineer James Floyd sketches a delta wing, an aggressive 50-foot triangle that looks like it was ripped from a fighter 20 years in the future. To test the concept, Avro builds 9 scale models, straps them to Nike rocket boosters, and fires them over Lake Ontario at speeds approaching Mach 1.7. Engineers watch from boats, calculating drag coefficients while the models disappear beneath the waves. It's brutal. It's expensive. It works. The real marvel is what you can't see from the outside. Buried in the Arrow's spine is one of the earliest electronic flight control and stability augmentation systems ever installed in a high-performance combat aircraft. Instead of cables and pulleys, electrical signals are processed by vacuum tube computers, which calculate optimal control surface deflections and send hydraulic commands to actuators powerful enough to lift 6 elephants. The system corrects for turbulence, asymmetric thrust, the 1,000 invisible forces trying to tear a Mach 2 aircraft apart, its technology decades ahead of its time. Across the street, Arenda Engines is solving an even harder problem. The Arrow needs engines that don't exist, so Arenda builds the Iroquois, a twin-spool turbojet that will be the most powerful engine in the world, 17 feet long, weighing 4,650 pounds, capable of 19,250 pounds dry thrust and 25,000 pounds with afterburner. The compressor blades are titanium, saving 850 pounds compared to steel. With the Iroquois, the Arrow will reach Mach 2.3 at 70,000 feet. The testing is relentless. An Iroquois is mounted to the side of a borrowed Boeing B-47 bomber, the only 7-engine B-47 ever flown. The engine screams through 35 hours of flight testing. It performs flawlessly. And then there's the man who has to make it all fly. Jan Jurakowski, Polish fighter race, Battle of Britain veteran. In 1958, at age 43, he draws the most important assignment of his life, first flight of RL-201, March 25, 1958, 9:51 a.m. The Pratt & Whitney J-75 engines spool up, less than 3,000 feet of runway and she's airborne. Jurakowski takes her to 5,000 feet, 35 minutes. Flawless. Over the next 11 months, Jurakowski and his fellow test pilots, Władysław Spud Potocki, Peter Cope, pushed the Arrow harder, Mach 1.89, Mach 1.95 in a dive, altitudes above 50,000 feet. On the 7th flight, Jurakowski exceeds 1,000 miles per hour while still climbing. The performance projections said Mach 1.6 maximum with the J-75 engines. They're brushing the edge of Mach 2. 5 prototypes fly, RL-201 through RL-205. In Malton, the production line hums. 32 more Arrows in various stages of assembly. RL-206. The first Mark II airframe intended for the Iroquois engines sits in the hangar, structurally complete, awaiting engines that will never fly. In October 1958, Soviet scientists and engineers tour the Avro plant. They examine the Arrow, ask technical questions, take notes. Their assessment? This is an excellent aircraft. We are puzzled why its development might not continue. But puzzlement is already turning to dread in Ottawa. The costs are spiraling. The program is bleeding money, hundreds of millions of dollars that a mid-sized nation like Canada can't easily afford. And in Washington, a different message is being whispered. Interceptors are obsolete. The future is missiles. The Soviets aren't coming with bombers anymore. They're coming with ICBMs, and you can't intercept a ballistic missile with a fighter, no matter how fast it flies. The command will never come. The cracks appear slowly, then all at once. John Diefenbaker becomes Prime Minister in June 1957, riding a wave of fiscal conservatism, promising to rein in what he calls rampant liberal spending. Avro Canada, now Canada's third-largest business enterprise, is precisely the kind of target his base loves to hate. Defense Minister George Perks, a decorated veteran who understands bombers but distrusts aerospace engineers, begins asking uncomfortable questions. How much has been spent? How much more will be needed? Where are the foreign buyers? The answers are not encouraging. By late 1958, unit costs had risen dramatically, far beyond original projections. The Astra fire control system is bleeding money. The Sparrow 2 missile is years behind schedule. Perks cancels both. The Arrow will use off-the-shelf American systems instead. And then there's the geopolitical shift. On August 21, 1957, the Soviets successfully test their first intercontinental ballistic missile. Earlier that year, the British government releases a defense white paper declaring that manned interceptors are obsolete. The Americans echo this sentiment. The USAF is already cancelling its own advanced interceptor programs. The North American XF-108 Rapier, nearly identical in concept to the Arrow, will never leave the drawing board. By late 1958, Diefenbaker signals openness to American missile defense solutions, including the Mach system, nuclear-tipped interceptors that will push the defensive line north. The implicit message: Canada doesn't need the Arrow. America has a cheaper solution. In September 1958, Crawford Gordon storms into Diefenbaker's office, desperate, furious. He pounds the Prime Minister's desk, demanding that the Arrow not be scrapped. Diefenbaker threatens to have him thrown out. Gordon leaves knowing that the plane he loves is already dead. February 20th, 1959. Friday. The day begins like any other at the Malton plant. 14,000 workers clock in. Engineers review flight test data. Machinists mill components for aircraft that will never be finished. The production line hums. At 11 a.m. Eastern Time, in Ottawa, Prime Minister Diefenbaker rises in the House of Commons. His voice is steady, measured, devoid of emotion. The key sentence arrives without preamble, without apology. The development of the Arrow aircraft and Iroquois engine should be terminated now. The announcement travels faster than sound. At 4 p.m., the PA system crackles to life across the Avro plant. Workers stop mid-task. The voice is Crawford Gordon's, clipped, hollow, defeated. "Notice of termination," he says. "There will be no work for you." Silence. Then the sound of tools being set down, thousands of them. Wrenches, micrometers, welding torches. The metallic percussion of an industry dying in real time. 14,000 people unemployed before sunset. Another 15,000 in the supply chain will follow within weeks. But the real nightmare hasn't begun yet. March 26, 1959. 1 month after Black Friday, Air Marshal Hugh Campbell sends a recommendation to Defense Minister Perks. All Arrow airframes, engines, engineering data, and test records should be destroyed. The official reason is security. There are fears a Soviet mole has infiltrated Avro. On April 8th, Perks agrees. April to May 22, 1959. Workers arrive at the Malton plant for a job they will hate for the rest of their lives. They bring acetylene torches, cutting wheels, sledgehammers. The 5 flying Arrows are dragged from their hangars onto the tarmac like condemned prisoners. RL-201, the first, the pioneer, sits gleaming white under the spring sun. A worker positions his torch against the delta wing. The flame ignites. Metal begins to glow red, then white. The torch cuts. The smell is acrid, metallic, wrong. Titanium and aluminum vaporizing. The screech of saw blades against structural members. Wing sections severed and dropped onto concrete. Engineers stand watching from second-floor windows, unable to look away, unable to intervene. One of them, offered an axe to help, puts his head in his hands and whispers, "I can't." On the production line, the 32 partial airframes are cut into manageable pieces. The jigs and tooling are destroyed. Blueprints are burned. Test data is shredded. The institutional knowledge of how to build a Mach 2 interceptor evaporates in smoke and scrap metal. By July 1959, the massacre is complete. Every arrow, every Iroquois engine, every piece of tooling has been reduced to scrap. A Hamilton junk dealer named Samuel Lax buys the debris at 6.5 cents per pound. The wreckage is melted down. Some of it becomes pots and pans. The most advanced interceptor in the world, transformed into cookware. Only a few fragments survive. The nose section of RL-206, marked with the words, "Cut here," beside a jagged blowtorch scar. A few wing panels, some landing gear components. Ken Barnes preserves critical documents and engineering drawings, hiding them for decades. But these are relics, ghosts, echoes of what might have been. The tarmac at Malton is empty now. The silence is absolute. No engines, no tooling, no future. But in the offices and homes of Malton, men and women who built the impossible are making phone calls, updating resumes, writing letters to addresses in Maryland and Florida and Texas. Because if Canada doesn't want them, someone else will. The Arrow is dead, but the minds that built it are looking south, toward a different dream, toward a new impossible challenge, toward the moon. April 1959, Hampton, Virginia. Roughly 24 former Avro engineers arrive at Langley Air Force Base, carrying suitcases and blueprints. Canadians mostly, though a few are British expatriates. They know delta wings, advanced flight control systems, and how to make the impossible fly. NASA's Space Task Group needs them desperately. The call came almost immediately after Black Friday. Robert Gilruth, former NACA engineer, now leading America's fledgling human spaceflight effort, had worked with Avro during the Arrow's wind tunnel testing. When he heard about the cancellation, he picked up the phone. Jim Chamberlain, Avro's chief of technical design, answered. "Are you interested in the Man in Space program?" Within days, Chamberlain and chief engineer Bob Lindley flew to Washington with a proposal. On March 14, 1959, less than a month after the Arrow's death, NASA officials sat down in the Malton cafeteria and interviewed 100 candidates. 32 job offers were made. 25 were accepted. The group included Canadian-born engineers like Jim Chamberlain, Owen Maynard, John Hodge, Brian Erb, Richard Carley and Fred Matthews. Names that would become woven into the fabric of American space history. Robert Gilruth would later call them a godsend. Chamberlain arrives at Langley and immediately hates the Mercury capsule's execution. The internal systems are chaos. Components piled everywhere. A maintenance nightmare. By August 1959, he's head of engineering for Mercury. When Mercury succeeds, Alan Shepard's Freedom 7 flight on May 5, 1961, Chamberlain is already sketching something better. The Gemini spacecraft will be modular, logical, perfect for practicing rendezvous and docking skills essential for a lunar mission. But Chamberlain's real contribution comes in 1961, when NASA engineer John Hobolt proposes lunar orbit rendezvous. Instead of flying directly to the moon and back, send a small lander down from orbit. Rendezvous, return, come home. It saves weight, fuel, makes the impossible achievable. Chamberlain recognizes the logic immediately. By 1962, NASA commits to lunar orbit rendezvous for Apollo, which means they need a lander. Owen Maynard, Sarnia, Ontario native, former RCAF Mosquito pilot, University of Toronto graduate, is sitting in a Houston office when he realizes, to land on the moon, you need something that's never been built. Not an airplane, not a capsule, something in between. He starts sketching. A descent stage for engines and fuel. An ascent stage for the crew. 4 legs. Minimal aerodynamics. There's no atmosphere on the moon. By 1963, Maynard is chief of the Lunar Module Engineering Office. His desk drawer sketches become the blueprint Grumman aircraft will spend 6 years refining. Thomas Kelly, Grumman's lead engineer, will later joke that Maynard had a drawing hidden in his desk, and Kelly's team worked to match it. Maynard's initial concepts define the LM's architecture, the modular structure, the lightweight construction, the spindly legs strong enough to support a spacecraft on alien soil. When Apollo 11's Eagle touches down at Tranquility Base on July 20th, 1969, it's carrying Owen Maynard's vision made real. The other Canadians spread through NASA like capillaries, essential but often invisible. John Hodge becomes one of the first flight directors. Brian Erb designs the ablation heat shield for the Apollo command module. Richard Carley develops guidance and navigation systems. Fred Matthews writes the flight controller handbook. Leonard Packham builds communications and tracking systems. Stanley Cohn, Eugene Duret, George Watts. Names that appear in technical documents, but rarely in history books. Together they carry the ethos of Malton. Precision engineering, ruthless problem-solving, the refusal to accept that something can't be done. The Arrow taught them to build the impossible. NASA gives them a new impossibility to conquer. On July 16, 1969, a Saturn V rocket lifts off from Kennedy Space Center. Strapped to its nose is a command module designed with input from Avro engineers. Below that, a service module using systems they helped develop. And tucked inside the third stage is the Lunar Module. Maynard's bug, Chamberlain's dream. The culmination of everything they learned building a white delta-winged interceptor that was supposed to defend the Arctic. 4 days later, Neil Armstrong's voice crackles through mission control. Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed. Owen Maynard, watching from Houston, allows himself a moment of satisfaction. Then he goes back to work. There are still problems to solve. The Eagle has to lift off again. The astronauts have to rendezvous with the command module. They have to come home. Jim Chamberlain is there too, troubleshooting. Always troubleshooting. He stayed at NASA until 1970, then moved to McDonnell Douglas. He died on the 8th of March, 1981, several weeks before Columbia's first orbital flight on the 12th of April, 1981. Owen Maynard will leave NASA the same year, join Raytheon, and retire to Waterloo, Ontario in 1992. He'll die in 2000. His contributions to Apollo mostly forgotten outside aerospace circles. But on that July night in 1969, as the Eagle sits on the lunar surface and the world watches, there's a ghost present that no one acknowledges. The Arrow, the white interceptor that was supposed to be obsolete. The aircraft that was dismembered and melted and erased because it represented a future Canada decided it couldn't afford. The men who built it didn't disappear. They went south. They took their knowledge, their precision, their refusal to accept impossible, and aimed it at a different target. Not Soviet bombers, the moon. The Eagle that landed at Tranquility Base carried the spirit of the Arrow in every rivet, every calculation, every line of code. Canada gave up its dream of the stars. The engineers who built that dream simply found another way to reach them. In Ottawa, at the Canada Aviation and Space Museum, you can stand before a ghost. The nose section of RL-206 rests on a display platform, 17 feet of white aluminum alloy. 2 wingtips sit nearby. An Iroquois engine, never fired in anger, gleams mutely under museum lights. These are the fragments, most of what survived when a nation decided its dream was too expensive. Visitors photograph it. Children press their faces close to the plexiglass, trying to imagine this truncated piece as part of something whole, something flying. Most don't understand what they're looking at. A cancelled airplane, a footnote in Cold War history, another military project that went over budget. But some understand. Some see the phantom aircraft behind the relic, the white delta wings screaming through Arctic skies at Mach 2, defending a nation that chose to destroy it rather than complete it. They see Jan Zurakovsky pushing the throttles forward, breaking records, proving the impossible was merely difficult. They see 14,000 workers who built magnificence and were rewarded with unemployment. They see the engineers who refused to let their knowledge die with the Arrow, who carried it south, who aimed it at the moon. History asks uncomfortable questions. What if Canada had finished the Arrow? What if it had sold to foreign buyers, modernized its systems, kept the production line running? Would Canadian aerospace still be a global leader? Would those engineers have stayed home, building satellites and spacecraft in Malton instead of Houston? Or was the cancellation inevitable, Was the Arrow simply the wrong machine for the wrong war? Too expensive for a middle power to sustain? A relic of bombers and interceptors in an age of missiles and mutual assured destruction? The answer perhaps is that both are true. The Arrow failed, but the minds that built it succeeded beyond measure. They put boot prints on the moon. They helped design the lunar module that made Neil Armstrong's one small step possible. They proved that Canadian ingenuity, when pointed at the impossible, could accomplish anything, even if Canada itself refused to believe it. In a field near Edenvale, Ontario, there's a full-scale replica of RL-203, built by retired Avro engineers who couldn't let the dream die. It will never fly. It doesn't need to. It stands as testament to what was built, what was lost, and what endured. The Arrow was destroyed, but it was never defeated. Its spirit lives in every spacecraft that leaves Earth, in every engineer who refuses to accept that something can't be done, in every nation that dares to reach beyond its grasp. Canada built a miracle once, then watched it burn, but the ashes rose, crossed borders, and touched the stars. The Arrow never flew to the moon, but the men who built it did, and that, in the end, might be the greater achievement. If this story moved you, hit that like button. It helps us uncover more forgotten chapters of engineering and ambition. Subscribe to stay connected with these untold Cold War histories. Each one deserves to be remembered, and we'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment below. Where are you watching from? Are you Canadian? American? Did your family work in aerospace? Our community spans from Malton to Houston, from engineers to history lovers. You're part of keeping these stories alive. Thank you for watching.